152, ready for IFR departure, runway 2, center.
Emirates 404 Heavy, contact Singapore departure on 120.3352, cleared for takeoff, runway 2, center.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 2, center, 352.
120.3, Emirates 404 Heavy. Singapore 193, turn next taxiway. Singapore 214 Heavy, cleared to land, runway 2, center.
Cleared to land, runway 2, center. Singapore 214 Heavy.
Singapore 193, exit runway when able. Singapore 193, contact ground on 121.725. Going to 121.725, Singapore 193.
The boarding requested.
Singapore Tower, 287 Heavy, is 38 miles south, inbound ILS, runway 2, center, approach.
352, contact Singapore departure on 120.3287 Heavy, Singapore Tower, fly straight in, runway 2, center, altimeter 2984.
Fly straight in, runway 2, center, 287 Heavy. Singapore Tower, Singapore 807 Heavy is 10 miles south, inbound ILS, runway 2, center, approach.
Singapore 807 Heavy, Singapore Tower, make straight in, runway 2, center, altimeter 2983.
Singapore Tower, Singapore 636 Heavy at runway 2, center, ready for takeoff. IFR to Tokyo.
Singapore 636 Heavy, hold short, runway 2, center, traffic is Airbus on short final.
Hold short, runway 2,
Through the
center,
boarding side, you
Singapore
want to be there
636
clearly.
Heavy.
Crew bus is coming.
120.3352. Fly straight in, runway 2, center, Singapore 807 Heavy.
Singapore 807 Heavy, cleared to land, runway 2, center, follow Airbus on the runway. Singapore 214 Heavy, exit runway when able.
Cleared to land, runway 2, center, Singapore 807 Heavy.
Singapore 214 Heavy, contact ground
Through
on
the boarding siding.
121.725.
Going to 121.725, Singapore 214 Heavy.